So what kind of privileges do you bring to the table? Yeah, definitely. I can tell you that I've fallen that. I mean, I come back from, I graduated from high school in the 80s. So, computers, supercomputers were just coming around then. And so the distance we've come, cell phones. I grew up, my kids didn't have cell phones. And now there are many computers that we're sitting there holding in the palms of our hands. So to take my experiences of what I might be able to, something that comes easily that you've grown up as a young child with, that I've had to learn is definitely a privilege that you would have over others. Yeah. So not only were you dealing with different positionalities of being here in the States and studying in the States and coming up with your design, you were talking about a whole nother country and not knowing their culture and what and access to materials that they have. Definitely. What else?
This definitely isn't as big of a issue, I guess. But last semester I was on Innovation to Reality, which is like working very closely with kids and like making like engineering projects for them. And we were all college students, and we were making projects for middle schoolers, and vastly underestimating how smart they would be. So even that small of a disconnect of 7 or 8 years was big enough for like people to like we just didn't even comprehend the fact that those middle schoolers would be able to do things that it took college students like multiple weeks to do. You know.
Right. So the differences in the level of them. How many in here are first generation college students? Got a few of you in here. How do you? That's a little different, isn't it? And like Carrie mentioned, sharing with her story, she didn't even have anybody to share the process of applying for college and financial aid and all of those things. And I had a conversation with my daughter-in-law last night, who's a first-time, and she was asking questions because she's in for the first time, trying to go to college, and she's a first generation. And I come from a first generation and did it even later. So I just graduated from college a year ago, where it definitely am not sitting in your shoes. So for me to go through that and interacting with you in the beginning was very scary to me because I believe it or not, me starting out in my late 40s and finishing in my 50s, I was petrified of you young folks because I felt like you just knew so much more than me. It's the same way with dealing with your projects with the people that when you're designing your projects for the community. You're going to have all facets of life that you're interacting. Now, you're going to interact with the people in charge, and they probably, could very well come with the same background as you have. Um, but the people that they're serving may not. And so you have to, so if you don't take a time to position yourself and take a check of where you are coming from and how you might react differently to something, it's going to could make or break your design in being effective, and which is, you don't want to work that hard for something and not end up having an effective piece at the end, right? So that kind of covered the interactions with the community partners, of how you might have to learn to interact a little differently, with the technology differences, with knowledge differences, with generational differences, all those different things. So how are some of those ways that we can put those into ways to address your positionality? I think it's pretty obvious, that it sounds simple in saying be respectful, remember your personality, acknowledge your power differentials, allow everyone to have a voice, develop meaningful relationships, and be an active listener. Can someone tell me what an active listener is? Absolutely. I do a whole actually presentation on this, on active listening. How you can engage, how you do reflection in talking about what they're talking about, so they know that you're actually listening and understanding what they're saying. Doing your nods or your verbal nods of during a conversation. So being active in that listening, and the more active you are, the more that you will find that you are a better listener. And also it tells that other person that you care enough to listen. So so definitely that having that active listening skill is important. So anybody have anything else they would like to add to this list that you think is missing?
I teach business writing for entrepreneurs, and my students have done projects in the past working with the North End Community Center and the City of Lafayette, and we're really trying to target, there's high rates of housing turnover in the North End neighborhoods, high levels of poverty, and so my students are coming up with outreach proposals, right? Ideas to help the new community programs that the new community center can offer, particularly for job training programs. And so it's the end of the semester, and my students are presenting to our community partners, who are representatives from the city and the North End Community Center. So they're people with power in charge. But my students start their presentation saying, well, North End residents are unmotivated to find jobs. So here are some ideas we have to help motivate them. Can anyone imagine why that maybe didn't go over so well? I mean, so again, like I said, fortunately they were not presenting to residents themselves. If they had been, it would have been even worse. But the feedback that my students got then was all about, like, you really can't frame it this way when you're going into the neighborhood trying to talk to people. Instead, we want to frame it as removing barriers to employment, right? There's lots of, you can't possibly know all of the different things going on in individual homes that are preventing people from having enough employment to pay, to facilitate their whole family life, right? And so my students were really frustrated because they actually had some really creative, fun, innovative ideas for these, about volunteer days that could get people involved, some cool creative ideas, but they got no feedback on the ideas themselves because they walked in offending the community partner and the community that we're supposed to be working for, right? So you may not have as high tension of situations as that, but you can certainly, I think everyone can imagine a conversation that has gone awry because you put your foot in your mouth and said the wrong thing. And so positionality is really a way to kind of think about that at every step of, am I coming in with assumptions that I need to keep in check in order to be respectful and be an active listener, and make sure that, throughout that design thinking process, right, empathy is part of that step. Are you really thinking about, can blind people access this tool I'm building? Are they going to be able to go pick up materials at Menards? How do we make sure that we are not making assumptions that are going to make our final products unuseful to the communities we're trying to serve, right?
Yeah. Can I add on to? So to add on to a little bit of her story there is, and I'm going to push back on the other side. So when they decided to build the North End Community Center, so this is an area of town that has a lot of history. It's been in Lafayette a long time. You have people that have lived their entire lives that are still living in there. Unfortunately, they have had a lot of things move in with them that has made their area of town be thought of less than. So one of the things they said that was very strong language that the faith community was coming in and building this beautiful brand new community center for them, and they referred to them as the North Side. They immediately got pushed back. We're not the North Side. We are a community, and we're proud of our community, and so they had to change it to North End instead of side. I mean, so knowing that where that was coming from, they themselves in building, they had completely pure intentions of what they were building, this great big beautiful building, and it is lovely. It's a wonderful space, and it's really nice for everybody to come and engage and interact with, and has really made a bright spot in that end. But them coming in with that expectations, and they were also very put off of, what services do you need for this? They're like, well, you're going to just come in right on your white horse, and you're going to save the day. You're just going to save the North Side from being this horrible place to live. And they had to take a few steps back themselves. So even though they were giving lessons to you, they had already gotten those lessons from the community. So this is just the way in life of taking yourself, your positionality, and understanding where you come from first helped you maybe see where and learning where they come from is going to make that conversation go much, much better. I think that's it. Do you have any questions for us? Did I get to it? Oh, yeah. We'll just skip that one.
Questions or situations that you guys are facing that you want to talk through? Other questions about thinking about positionality?
Has this been helpful? Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.